call this meeting of the Children and Families Finance and Policy Committee to order. The first order item on the agenda today is the approval of minutes for Wednesday, March 19th. Representative Altendorf, have you had the opportunity to review the minutes?
Yes, Madam Chair, I did, and I move the March 19th minutes.
Thank you. Representative Altendorf moves approval of the March 19th minutes. Any discussion to that motion, members? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Right. The motion prevails and the minutes are approved. The first bill on our agenda for the day is House File 1660 from Representative Frazier. So, is he still in the room? You know what? He is across the hall in public safety, probably making quorum over there. So he will join us briefly. I do see Representative Rehrauer. Yeah. Okay, yeah. We're going to move on to the next agenda, which is 1824 with Representative Rehrauer, since she's here in the room. And so Representative Rehrauer and your testifiers can come up to the table. I will move that House File 1824 be laid over for possible inclusion. And I do see that you have an author's A1 amendment. Do you want to introduce the bill, or do you want to move the amendment before you introduce the bill?
We can move the amendment before introduction.
Right. Very good. Can you give us a little bit of background on the author's amendment, Representative Rehrauer?
Yes. The author's amendment clarifies that the child welfare professionals who use this technology will not submit requests directly through the department, but rather they're going to be using a third-party technology portal.
All right. Thank you. Members, any discussion to the A1 to get the bill in the shape the author would like? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The A1 is adopted. Representative Rehrauer, to your bill as amended.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. So I'd like to share that HF 1824 allocates funding to connect children and families in crisis with community organizations, nonprofits, churches, and individuals through care sharing technology. We know that when families struggle, whether due to financial hardship, housing instability, or unexpected emergencies, too often they don't know where to turn. As a teacher, I've seen this firsthand, but we also know that our communities are filled with people and organizations that are ready to help, but the challenge is making sure that we can make those connections quickly and effectively. We believe we have found one of those solutions that will do that. Today I have with me Tim Rehrauer from Care Portal, the organization that has created its own care sharing technology, who will speak to the need for this legislation and the positive impact that his organization has had on Minnesota. But before I do that, in your packets, you will find a letter from Olmsted County and my own Anoka County, who support this bill and wish to see Care Portal expand further throughout Minnesota. In your packets, you also have information on how Care Portal works and the impact it's had. You have documents related to its goals for expanding their services in Minnesota. In this bill, we are seeking $300,000 in state funding for fiscal year 25 and $500,000 for fiscal year 26 and 27. Care Portal will be supplementing these funds by covering roughly 30% of the costs through private contributions. So this is a public-private partnership. The investment would enable Care Portal to extend services from the current 4 counties they're serving to around 20 counties throughout the state within the next 2 years. The counties are selected by those with the highest numbers of kids in out-of-home care, using both total number of kids but also the rate per 1,000 as determined by Minnesota DHS data. So this ensures we'll be serving the full state, including greater Minnesota. The one-time funding is used strategically to provide staff to get county services staff, which would be the requesting agencies.
Representative Rehrauer, if I can ask you to pause just for one moment. We're getting alerts that the audio online is not working. Just see if we can finagle that quickly for our friends who are watching from home. Oh. Okay. It's working in the room. Okay. All right. To our friends watching online, just feel free to send me a little. Yeah. Can you go ahead, Representative Rehrauer, and just
Do you want me to
continue.
start over? Just continue?
continue.
Okay. So the one-time funding is used strategically to provide staff to get county services staff, which we would consider the requesting agency, and then the organizations and churches, which would be the responders, signed up on this portal. I would also like to thank Representative Nadeau for being a co-author. Madam Chair, I'm pleased to turn it over to my testifier, Tim Heroff, who is a former Rochester Police captain and is now dedicating his time in retirement to help kids in need. He is the area director for Care Portal of Minnesota, and he'll share some further details with you. Thank you, members.
All right. Mr. Heroff, welcome to the committee. You can introduce yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Yes, thank you, Co-Chair Kotyza-Witthuhn, Co-Chair West, and members of the committee. My name is Tim Heroff. I serve as the Minnesota Area Director for Care Portal, a national organization that connects communities to children and families in need through care sharing technology. I'm excited to be here in support of House File 1824, and I want to extend my gratitude to Representative Rehrauer for her leadership on this bill, as well as the bipartisan group of co-sponsors who recognize the urgent need to strengthen support for children and families in our communities. Across Minnesota, in most every community, there are children and families in crisis who need help. In those same communities, there are people who want to take action because they care. But what they really need is a connection point. And that's where Care Portal comes in. And here's how it works. Child-serving professionals working with families oftentimes identify needs which they just cannot accommodate. Those caseworkers are now able to submit a request on behalf of that family into an easy-to-use web tool. Care Portal then shares that request with a network of local churches, businesses, and community groups who then volunteer to meet tangible needs, ensuring that struggling families receive the critical support that they need. Care Portal provides training to caseworkers and the community responders who use our technology to ensure that families are honored and respected in this whole process. All requests are vetted and approved by supervisory staff within the requesting agency before being sent out to the community. Care Portal started its work here in Minnesota in Olmsted County just 4 years ago.
Recording in progress.
Don't worry about it.
Good.
That's expected.
Okay. Since then, we have expanded our services to Anoka, Hennepin, and parts of Ramsey counties. I'm pleased to have letters of support from Anoka, Hennepin, and Anoka counties in your packets supporting this bill and Care Portal's work at the county level. We've seen firsthand how vital our services have been to children and families in need. We have now served over 3,200 Minnesota children since launching and have had a total of over $1.3 million in economic impact. House File 1824 would enable us to expand our services even further. I'd like to close on this note. For more than 3 decades, I served in law enforcement in Rochester and have witnessed personally and firsthand the challenges that vulnerable children and families face every day. I saw how families in crisis often lacked the support they needed to stay together, and how community resources, when properly mobilized, could make all the difference in stabilizing a household and providing some hope. Care Portal requests the kind of proactive, community-driven approach that can strengthen families, reduce out-of-home placements, and create a system of care that prioritizes keeping children with their families whenever possible. By investing in resources that connect families to community, we can build stronger, healthier communities and prevent the long-term consequences of family separation. I appreciate the community's consideration of this important bill and encourage its passage. Thank you to the chairs and members of the committee for your time and for your commitment to serving Minnesota's children and families. I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rehrauer, for joining us. Are there any members of the public who wish to testify on House File 1824 today? All right, seeing none, we will move to member discussion and questions. Any thoughts or questions, members? Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question to the author or the testifier. You're probably the testifier, and good to see you again. We met, I think, a couple weeks ago regarding
Yes.
this. Seems like a really good concept. The question on the flyer that you have here on the back page with the example, the seeking the $300,000 for 25, 26, and the $500,000, 26, 27 care portal would supplement these funds. Is there other funds then that you're currently, that you have access to through nonprofit groups or churches or other groups in the community?
Mr. Rehrauer.
Madam Chair, Representative, yes, we end up doing a lot of soliciting of funding from private organizations, foundations. There's one based right here in St. Paul, the Sauer Family Foundation, that's been very generous in helping us to do the work that we do. And we would intend to continue to do that, to fund our portion of this expansion.
Representative McDonald, any follow-up?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes. So on the bill, it's an unspecified amount, but is that the amount, Representative, that he has in his flyer, the $300,000 for?
Representative McDonald, that was included in the author's A1 amendment that we adopted, I think, before you joined, is the $500,000 that.
Okay, good.
Yep.
And then a follow-up, Madam Chair.
Representative
Last
McDonald.
question then. Are you able to share your current fiscal year of donations, private donations, or do you want to keep that private?
Mr. Rehrauer.
Yes, Madam Chair, Representative, off the top of my head, I believe we've raised about $175,000 this year in private donations.
That's good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Members, seeing no further discussion, I will allow Representative Rehrauer to give us closing comments.
Thank you so much, Chair, and Madam Chair, thank you. I just want to close with, I just started this position as a representative, and I've met with a number of people, but the reason I took on this bill is really the amazing passion that Tim has for this, and I know that he's going to be putting his heart and soul into this. Saw families in a lot of tough situations throughout his career and is now very dedicated in retirement to helping families. And so I just know that the work will get done well in addition to the private funding boosting that, which is why I took on the bill and urge your support.
Thank you, Representative Rehrauer, for being before us today, and I will renew my motion that House File 1824 be laid over, as amended, be laid over for possible inclusion. On your way. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Next on the agenda is House File 1660 from Representative Frazier. So you and your testifiers can approach the table, and we are planning to lay over House File 1660 today. So once you get situated, Representative Frazier, I will let you present your bill. Oh, that one. Okay. So I am moving House File 1660 before the committee and to be laid over. All right. Representative Frazier.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, all co-chairs, vice chairs, members for allowing me the opportunity to present House File 1660 today. House File 1660 is about making sure Minnesota's youth have access to safe, enriching, and supportive spaces outside of school hours. Each year, families struggle to navigate the 2,000 hours when school is not in session, especially when parents are working. Too many children are left without structured opportunities simply because their families cannot afford them. This issue is personal to me. Growing up, I relied on before and after school programs, not just as a way to fill time, but as a place to feel safe, build relationships, and grow. Those programs gave me access to mentors, academic support, and a sense of belonging. I know firsthand how critical these opportunities are for working families and children who need a place to thrive. I want to thank Vice Chair Nelson and the many members of this committee who are co-sponsoring this bill. We know the demand for after-school and summer programs is overwhelming across the state in urban, suburban, and rural areas. Yet the current landscape is fragmented and underfunded, leaving families without options. While recent one-time funding for after-school community learning grants through 2027 is a step forward, we need a more comprehensive approach. House File 1660 directs the Department of Children, Youth, and Families to conduct a statewide needs assessment. This process will not only collect data, but engage directly with communities to understand their unique challenges. The findings will provide clear recommendations on how to expand access to youth programming in a way that is equitable, sustainable, and responsible to families' needs. This isn't just a policy, it's an investment in our kids and the future of Minnesota. Every child deserves the same opportunities that helped shape my path, and we have a responsibility to make that a reality. With that, I will turn it over to the testifiers to share their perspectives.
All right. First on the list, we have Mira Wright. If you can introduce yourself and proceed with your testimony.
Actually, it's Mira Allen. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Mira Allen, and I'm a leader with the Barbershop and Black Congregation Cooperative. I'm a community health worker and also a health advocate for the Head Start program. Above all, I'm a mother of 6, and I am here today to speak in support of youth programming across the state of Minnesota. As a child, my siblings and I spent our summers at local parks. Our family was large, and we couldn't afford programs at youth centers. But the parks gave us a safe space to be. We had summer lunch programs and a community to belong to. And then suddenly something changed. The programs disappeared, the parks weren't the same, and suddenly kids like me from working families had fewer safe, affordable places to go. I wholeheartedly believe that if we want strong communities, we must invest in our children. Parks, after-school programs, summer programs, and youth centers aren't luxuries, they're necessities. They keep kids engaged, safe, and supported. And when we fail to invest in them, we see the consequences. Higher rates of violence, fewer opportunities, and a widening gap in access to enrichment. And so as a parent, I would not know what to do if it weren't for my children's before and after school. This program gave me so much relief knowing that I did not have to worry about what hours I worked. And then I also did not have to worry about them going to the bus stop alone. And so they are currently on their spring break, and they're enrolled in their spring break program, which is so much relief for me. But I know of many other families who don't have access to those programs, who may not be able to afford those programs. And so this bill is critical, is a critical first step to understanding the needs of all kids to have safe space and a positive opportunities. Regardless of their zip code or their family's income, I urge you to support this bill and make youth programming a priority around the state. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for sharing your experience, and my apologies mixing up your name. Next on the list, we have Alexandra Fitzsimmons. If you could introduce yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Alexandra Fitzsimmons, and I'm the Senior Policy Director with Children's Defense Fund Minnesota. Children's Defense Fund Minnesota advocates for policies and programs that improve the well-being of children and increase the economic security of families. We focus particular attention to Minnesota children who have been pushed to the margins, children living in poverty, Black children, American Indian children, children from communities of color, excuse me, and children living with disabilities. In addition to our policy, research, advocacy, and outreach work, CDF Freedom Schools provide high-quality out-of-school time opportunities during both the school year and the summer to over 2,000 K-12 Minnesota students annually. We see what's possible when access is made equitable. 85% of our scholars maintain or improve the reading levels over the summer, but we also see what happens when there is no access. Too many children left home without meaningful engagement or support simply because there are no programs available to them. I'm here today to speak in strong support of House File 1660, which seeks to address and assess the critical need for investments in out-of-school time programming for children. Out-of-school programming plays a critical role in supporting academics, social-emotional development, and positive self-identity for children. However, families throughout Minnesota are struggling to fill the thousands of hours that children have outside of school. When we think about the needs of children and families, high-quality after-school and summer programs are a critical piece of the puzzle. For families that can afford programming, these programs enrich children's lives and help parents maintain employment while having peace of mind that their children are engaged and safe. But for too many families across Minnesota, there are no viable options for out-of-care or for out-of-school opportunities. While many of us, when thinking back to our childhoods, can likely remember vibrant programming investments through our schools, faith communities, parks, rec centers, and community organizations, families today are seeing rec centers locked, lights off at parks, and schools empty once the final bell rings. With the social and educational challenges that have grown for children since the pandemic, after-school and summer programs are more critical than ever. A recent poll by the National After School Alliance found that 9 in 10 voters believe they are absolutely necessary for communities, the strongest support ever reported in 20 years surveying voters. We can better serve Minnesota children and families and build on the incredible assets we have in our schools, faith communities, libraries, rec centers, parks, and organizations. In order to better serve our children, we must first recognize and acknowledge that access to out-of-school opportunities is a statewide challenge that affects social, educational, and health outcomes for children. And after we recognize and acknowledge this challenge, we must have data and analyses available to inform and drive long-term, impactful solutions. This bill gives us the chance to gather the data we need to understand the scope of the access issue and reach all of Minnesota's children, regardless of income, zip code, or background. The interests, skills, and relationships that young people develop in quality out-of-school time activities help children thrive and communities flourish. And importantly, they can help youth discover and hone skills they will use as adults. We urge you to support House File 1660, which seeks to ultimately connect Minnesota children with quality out-of-school opportunities, thereby improving child well-being while strengthening our communities. Thank you to the committee for your dedication to the children in Minnesota.
Thank you, Ms. Fitzsimmons, for sharing that. Do we have any members of the public who wish to testify on House File 1660 this afternoon? All right, seeing none, we can move to member discussion and questions. Representative Frazier, it's my understanding that you have been in contact with the department and have some additional TA that as we potentially move into the omnibus process that we'll be able to update some of those simple language changes.
That is correct, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. And then I also have a quick question. Myself being a mother of 4, I'm no stranger to in the enrollment in extracurricular activities process. And so I was just reviewing some of the language in the bill, and we can follow up maybe even offline, but just in terms of enrollment dates, I know that particularly in my community, when there aren't an extended enrollment date, sometimes that can really be troubling for parents because they have to either be connected to the internet, available to wake up early, log on first thing. My husband and I have had to do phone, laptop, different things to make sure that we get our kids into the programs that we need them to be in. And some of those are even just summer school classes, not super competitive camps or that sort of thing. So I'm just kind of curious, has that been a part of the conversation? And perhaps we can tie that into just if there's a best way to make sure that for people who have to work or work outside of traditional work hours, that they are able to make sure that their kids are that they can get their kids signed up if they're not, if they're on the clock during those hours.
Madam Chair, thank you. No, I think that's a great point. I think as we gather information to do an assessment, I think one of the important things about that assessment is we want to make sure that it's accessible for everyone. And so I think that's a great point. It's something we want to make sure we take a look at.
Okay, wonderful. First, on the members list, we have Representative Nadeau.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome to our committee.
Thank you.
I think I understand what you're trying to do, but I don't understand how it will starts out in section 1 talking about, we're going to collect current state, county, city programs that offer, activities. And then we're gonna do a financial assessment. And that makes sense to me. I mean, that's quite a heavy lift. I mean, I'm just thinking about Hennepin County.
Yeah.
And the number of programs that we have there, Rivers Park District, the Minneapolis Parks Board, Hennepin Youth Sports. I mean, I don't, that's a daunting task. I don't even know how you would begin identifying the number of programs in Hennepin County. So, but then when I move down, we get into section B, it's section 1, letter B. Now we're using a community engagement process to identify barriers. And I don't know how those two things
go together. Thank you.
Representative Nadeau has been talking. For those that weren't able to hear, his microphone is now on at home.
And
Go ahead, Representative Nadeau.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, and for those of you that didn't hear me, I apologize.
We think that the room mic might have just picked it up, but just for clarity.
And then we get into this engagement process that makes less sense to me. So we're going to identify all these programs, which is this massive lift, and then we're going to try to identify barriers to those things. And you're not going to get barriers when you come to Hennepin County and you ask about just our Hennepin Youth Sports grants.
Yeah.
We work really hard to eliminate those barriers. I mean, we provide swimming lessons for kids now today, for example. And we open those up and we target those things. And I hope that, that they're going to say there are no barriers to entering into our programs. And so I'm just having a hard time understanding. I think I understand what you would like to do, and I support that concept. I just don't know how this could be implemented. So can you just try to convince me?
Representative Frazier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Nadeau, I think that's the reason we need to do this. I mean, everything you just said about how hard Hennepin County has worked to remove barriers, if we do this assessment and we learn that in Hennepin County there are no barriers to any programs, which I doubt we're going to hear that, but if we do hear that, then how did you do it? And how can we scale that up and we implement that across the entire state with other programs? I think that is the point of this. I can't specifically answer all your questions, but the whole idea of an assessment is to address exactly what you just asked.
All right. Representative Nadeau.
And thank you. And I guess I appreciate that. Like I say, I don't know how you would do it. And then when you go out into Cottonwood County and you go to Black Lepar County, very different areas, very different programming. And again, I just don't know how this is doable. But thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Perez-Vega.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Frazier. I am a proud co-author of this because this is the programs that led me to run for office and be in the seat to represent the district, and also quite historically being the first Latina woman to chair the City of St. Paul's delegation here at the state. Because I worked as a youth in youth programming after school that was facilitated through programs of funding, philanthropy, city, county, resources, training that provide empowerment to be in places where we feel isolated through strength of tutoring, whether it be through music programming, whether it be through after-school sports, connecting with our school districts who may be limited of funds of what we're seeing now, and especially in the federal level where we don't even know if we have accessibility anymore to what's called the Department of Education. These inclusivities are not just after-school programming, but mentorship programming. I served as a director of mentorship for the Twin Cities Mobile Jazz Organization, and it was not just for the Twin Cities. It amplified the need and the necessity for it to grow and be supportive of other organizations. Matter of fact, my colleague here, who was the director of 826 that served inside the school program and offered after-school programming, we worked collaboratively into these spaces that have now led us because these kids grow to become adults who are then empowered to say, maybe I'll become a teacher or a mentor, or hey, get a full basketball scholarship to Georgetown and by freshman year be the Jalen Suggs that plays for Orlando Magic out of the Westside Boosters program. it's a necessity and it works. It works not just in the metro area. It works when we talk about the reservations and those kids that are now the adults and the fathers and the teachers that are district representatives in Red Lake, like Thomas X, who provides literacy and tutoring to kids that are on the reservation who may have never even left the reservation and now are advocating for these types of programs here at the state. So when we say, I don't know how it's gonna work, it does work. Because we're staring at how it works. We're fighting for this because it works. It makes the rates of children recognize that there's opportunities to not be so scared to even go into school the next day. Kids go to school to say, it just doesn't end right there. We need programming after. Parents are working hard every day. I know, hard every day. And some kids don't have that privilege of hardworking parents either because of the systemic injustices. And it's when we invest in these programs that fit for all of our kids, where they're able to achieve and come back to the program to say, it works. That's what we got to keep consistent. I want to say thank you for giving your testimony as a mother and as somebody who grew up in the programming, whether it be on this side of town or that side of town. It's the importance that we have to connect with what works. It's about circulation and empowering and providing a flashlight with these programs of after-school program, with youth programming that provides a flashlight, okay, to the highest potential of what these kids can do and give back and deliver to our communities. So thank you so much. I know it works, and I'm here to fight for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Perez-Vega. You bring up, I think, a really good point. You mentioned our tribal nations. In terms of this assessment, does mention state, county, and city programming, and obviously our tribal nations are within counties, so just wanting to elevate the fact that we want to make sure that they are a part of this and consulted as we go forward. Representative Perez-Vega.
One more thing to add, especially in the aftermath of COVID, okay? Our cities, in particularly the parks, were needing to bring kids back into the program. And it was the after-school program and the youth programming through organizations like the West Side Boosters that had an enrollment of 900 kids participate. Whether they could afford it or not, they was finding resources. And they partnered with our parks through our city of St. Paul to now not just create one area, but to collaborate with folks like JK the Movement from the Rondo area and East Side. And so the impact of this, being able to deliver funds to the city to keep programs alive that work and bring 900 youth together through sports and tutoring, that right alone shows you some numbers, just to add to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Zalesnikar.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Rep. Frazier, for bringing this bill. You know, I understand what you're talking about, and I guess my only question is more, how do we ensure that there's not duplication? You know, we have the boys, there's so many different programs that exist in different communities that are doing wraparound type services for programming. And so I'm just wondering, how do we make sure that we're not doing any duplication in the sense of because there are some really great programs with the WISE Boys and Girls Club, various different things, cities, parks and rec programs that I've seen for the last 30 years that have done phenomenal things. And so I understand this. And my second thing is that your thoughts on the programming for 5-year-olds to 21, that's a big spread to me. It's not K through 12, it's to 21. So in some aspects we talk about, appropriate ages of grouping together. And so that's one thing I would just like to ask. And then to me, just wondering if this couldn't just be a responsibility within the new department for the commissioner to gather this data from the cities and counties without a fiscal note, just in their job responsibilities. Those are just some of my first thoughts.
Representative Frazier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it was 3 questions there. So with the first question, and I may have to ask you to repeat 1 or 2 of the questions, but with the first question, the assessment is the idea is to identify the gaps that are out there. So when you talk about duplication, we'll identify what's there, what's working, how it's working, if there's any barriers, and then where the gaps are that we need to fill in. So maybe it is with resources, we can help those organizations that exist already, help fill those gaps that may exist already. And then your second question was the age range from 5 to 21. I think the big thing here is that we do have some programs out there that are geared towards specific age range. That's another area where we want to make sure that we're capturing any gaps that are out there to ensure that we're capturing our youngest ones all the way up to the age of 21. Believe it or not, up to age 21, they still need some help. So that's the idea of that. And then lastly, if the new department could just absorb this, I don't know if the new department can just absorb this. In all the conversations, and please jump in if anyone has anything to add to that. In all the conversations, and to my knowledge that we've had, they haven't said, hey, Rep. Frazier, we can just do this. You don't need to do anything. We can just do this. I think that's why we need to take a look at what it may cost to do it, to figure out, and we want to do it the right way. We want to be thorough. We want to make sure that we're engaging in a manner that's appropriate. We want to make sure we're getting that input from those organizations that are doing the work now. Currently, they can talk about where they are, if there's gaps, if there's barriers, and then also make sure we're including the voices from the community so they can let us know where those gaps are and barriers are as well.
Representative Zalesnikar, any follow-up?
Thank you.
All right. We have Representative McDonald on the list, and we're going to call it at that so we can get you back to public safety.
Madam Chair, Representative Frazier, just to curiosity and quickly, I won't spend too much time on. After being here for too long, 14 years, I've seen a lot of these bills from Republicans and Democrats to evaluate programs, put money on, and to report back to the commissioner, whomever. In your bill, I see who it's reporting back to, the legislature. But very few occasions in the committees I've been, in the 14 years I've been here, do we ever see the results of a test where it's easy to have a bill and allocate $1 million for the funding or finding, but very seldom in committee do we have the commissioner, whomever the bill is addressed to, come back to us and say, well, this program's working good, we probably should put a little more money into it, or maybe not enough, or here's where we can improve it. I hardly ever see that. And it's unfortunate. What things, and I'm sure you're concerned with the bill that hopefully it does what you want it to do. What things would you ensure that when it comes back in February of 2026 with its findings, that we actually will hear it and adhere to it if there are recommendations that it's working or things aren't working in areas?
Representative McDonald, you're in the right committee for this. We have a long history of bringing the department back in to tell us what's going on. Representative Frazier.
Well, thank you, Representative McDonald, for the question, Madam Chair. I mean, for one, we're requiring that this report come back to the legislator. When I take a look, and the idea is to get these recommendations, and then I'm going to take a look at those recommendations, or if it's not me, someone will take a look at those recommendations and draft the bill seeking to implement those recommendations that are there, and then also bringing that commissioner in to speak about how they plan to implement those recommendations as part of the process. And that's the way I think we hold ourselves accountable, but also the leads of our agencies as well, to make sure we're doing what's best for our young people in Minnesota.
We're going to wrap up. Answer his question real quick. Representative Paris, briefly.
Thank you. Just on directing these programs to make sure that they continue to get funding in my pass is that we usually work with the system, whether it's the funds come from the county or the city. Each parent has to register their kid who goes through the program. So you see who's attended, you see if the kid succeeded, and that data is returned to the county, the city, whether it's a fiscally sponsored organization or not.
Okay. That's helpful. Representative Frazier, thanks for bringing this idea before the committee. Closing comments today.
This is a good bill. We've had some really committed organizations working on this. We've got and working on this. I was there the day that they had their conference and listening sessions, and this is what our young people said they wanted us to work on. That they wanted to make sure that we've looked at these, took a deep dive, looked at what's out there, looked at where the gaps are, and ensure that we provide resources for them. So I'm looking forward to continuing having this conversation, and I'm looking forward to the next sessions when we can put some things in place.
Wonderful.
Thank you all.
Well, thanks again, Representative Frazier, and to your testifiers. With that, we will now lay over House File 1660 for a possible inclusion within our omnibus bill. Next on the list, members, we have House File 1926 from Representative Mahamoud. As you and your testifiers approach the table, I'm going to move House File 1926 before the committee today with the intention to lay it over. So Representative Mahamoud, you can, once you're settled, go right ahead and introduce your bill.
Okay, good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to present House File 1926. The Greater Minneapolis Council of Churches, GMCC, has been a proud fixture in my district for over 120 years. But this bill highlights GMCC's truly statewide impact. HF 1926 provides a one-time appropriation of $1 million to help GMCC continue its essential work supporting 285 food shelves across Minnesota. For 43 years, through the Minnesota Food Share March campaign, GMCC has mobilized statewide support and leveraged private donations to sustain a local food shelves, all without ever receiving support for their own operations. However, in recent years, fundraising patterns have shifted and contributions have declined, even as food shelves continue to stress how vital these funds are. And as we all know, food insecurity is rising in Minnesota. These families and seniors and individuals who have come to need local food shelves cannot afford to have them shut their doors. A state investment at this critical time will not only help these food shelves provide support in the immediate and short term, it will help GMCC re-engage business sponsors and community partners, strengthening the long-term sustainability of the March campaign. Public investment has historically helped leverage greater private sector support, and this funding will serve as a catalyst to rebuild and expand those partnerships. House File 1926 is a strategic investment in food security, ensuring that GMCC can continue its decade-long mission and sustain an established network of food shelves that serve communities in many of our districts. I ask for your support and would now like to turn it over to my testifiers.
All right. Thank you, Representative Mahamoud. First, on the list, we have Adrian Dorn. If you would introduce yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, committee chairs and members. My name is Adrian Dorn. I am the president and executive director of GMCC, founded 120 years ago as Greater Minneapolis Council of Churches. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of House File 1926, Representative Mahamoud's bill to provide a one-time infusion of funds to the Minnesota Food Share March campaign. Since the early 1980s, the March campaign, which GMCC runs, has played a critical role in ensuring food shelves across Minnesota can continue serving their communities at a time when resources often run low after the influx of year-end holiday donations. It's a time that food shelves need additional support. Now, in its 44th year, the campaign consistently supports 285 food shelves statewide, including many in your districts. Each year, participating food shelves fundraise and receive food donations with technical support from GMCC. GMCC also raises funds and has historically distributed 100% of funds raised to participating food shelves based on a formula that provides a proportional match. The campaign thus requires food shelves to invest time and energy in fundraising to receive these matching dollars. One difference between the March campaign and other resources that food shelves are able to access is that these funds can be used for what they need, helping to pay for new shelving, deep cleaning a refrigerator to meet compliance requirements, and yes, more food. Based on our survey data, 91% of food shelves we work with say these funds are vital to their operations, and without additional investment, the future of the March campaign may be at risk. A one-time investment from the legislature would provide immediate relief to food shelves across Minnesota and encourage lapsed donors to re-engage, ensuring continued private sector support for years to come. The Minnesota Food Share March campaign has provided funding to food shelves in communities like Rogers, Waverly, Two Harbors, Mora, Cannon Falls, Fairmont, Bloomington, St. Paul, and Minneapolis for over 4 decades. I urge you to support House File 1926, and I am happy to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Dorn. Next, we have Christopher Anderson. You can introduce yourself for the record and proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Christopher Anderson. I'm Executive Director of Western Communities Action Network, also known as We Can. We are located in northwestern Hennepin County, so we have a very interesting demographic that we serve. We have one portion that is on the northwestern side of Lake Minnetonka, so we see extreme wealth, literally right next door to extreme poverty, where what used to be cabins are now rundown home rentals where many of our clients live. Moving out to the west and north, we have mostly rural areas. Neither one of these areas has what you would consider a low-cost store for food. So most of our clients go to Quick Trip or other gas stations to get many of their day-to-day food. So WeCan has been around 43 years, just as long as this campaign. We started our mobile market food delivery 11 years ago, and we have been involved in the campaign for every year since that program started. We looked at our numbers last year. In the last 3 years, over 1/3 of our donated food has come from this March campaign, so either 5 or 6 weeks, depending on the year, that our efforts are really lifted up in our community for this campaign. So it's really, really important to us. As you may know, food is more expensive now, and even the food banks can't get the food supplies, which means funneling down to the food shelf. It's even more rare for us. So we're having to purchase or reach out to our partners for food donations, and we're doing a lot of asking for many, many things. And as you know, everyone in this room has seen the cost of food and how it's impacting people. Our clients are not choosing which brand of this type of food can we purchase, but can we purchase this or not? So they're making those tough decisions. And so we're really trying to help with those efforts, and this is really important. This bill will even go beyond what we're doing now, and our need has grown over 25% every year the last 5 years, and I've been at WeCan 5 years. Looking at COVID, the numbers were crazy, as you know, but pretty consistently. So we know the need will continue, and so these additional funds will be extremely important to our client that we serve. And I just have a quick testimony from one of our clients. We did not ask for this, but we get these quite frequently with our clients thanking us for the work we do. Dear WeCan, I cannot fully express my gratitude in one email, but I want you to know I'm genuinely feeling gratitude, not just for the generosity towards me and my family, but the fact that your food program exists. I could not bear the thought of my family going hungry. Thank you again from the bottom of my heart, with every ounce of my soul, and every other cliche expression of gratitude and more. My heart is bursting with warmth. We are not hungry anymore, and we will never forget this. So I encourage you to support this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Are there any members of the public who wish to testify on House File 1926 today? All right, seeing none, we'll move to member discussion and questions. All right. We did already have Food Day, Representative Mahamoud,
Okay.
so I'm glad that you're able to be before the committee today, but we did have a very lengthy discussion on needs and hunger and all sorts over the state. So appreciate your testifiers being here to just amplify that a little bit more and what it means to your district particularly. So I'll give you final remarks on the bill.
Thank you so much for your time, committee. This is a smart, strategic way in keeping our food shelves stocked. So I do hope that you will support our bill.
All right. Thank you, Representative Mahamoud. Now we will lay over House File 1926 for possible inclusion, and appreciate you joining us today. All right. Members, next on the list, we have House File 1002 from Representative Hicks. So you can head up to the table with your testifiers and also approach the table so that we can keep moving here today. Right. Representative Hicks will be moving House File 1002 before the committee today with the intention of laying over for possible inclusion. So Representative Hicks, please get started and tell us about your bill.
Thank you, committee chairs, plural. Thank you so much for being here and for letting me present this amazing bill about one of my favorite programs, which is Head Start. I ask you to imagine a bright, eager 4-year-old named Maya. She's full of curiosity, asking questions, wants to know more about the world around her. But Maya faces a challenge. Her family struggles to make ends meet. In fact, they're significantly below the poverty line. And without access to early, quality education, she's at risk of falling behind before she even starts. This is where our amazing Minnesota Head Start program steps in and makes a difference for children like Maya all over our state. For decades, Head Start has been seen as a lifeline for low-income families, providing high-quality preschool education, meals, health services, and other family supports. But today, many children remain unable to access Head Start programs due to the limited funding. For me, Head Start is more than an early childhood program. For me, Head Start is a child welfare prevention program. The supports that we provide are wraparound and support entire families. Those conversations that occur during home visits, that happen at family engagement nights, that help connect a mom to a diaper bank, to a food shelf like we just heard, to a support person to navigate a complicated disability diagnosis, to make a referral to early childhood special ed or county case management for a diagnosis of a developmental disability. Those things prevent children from entering our child welfare system. They strengthen entire families. Parents receive information, resources, and most importantly, a trusted support person to help them navigate our complicated and bureaucratic systems. And we know that it works. Head Start's track records and data going back decades show that children who have attended Head Start have higher attendance rates. They spend 10 more days a year in school than their peers. They also experience fewer school moves. They provide multi-generational support for kids and families. Academically, Head Start students outperform their same grade peers in Minnesota's MCA tests, which, by the way, are happening today in Rochester, so good luck. They demonstrate lasting impact on learning. They set children up to step in a better space the moment they walk in the door. This request looks to increase funding to $15 million a year for the next biennium. I believe that this investment, although difficult to capture on a fiscal note, saves us money in additional special education costs down the road, in additional child welfare costs when children and families don't receive the supports they need, and in many other impactful ways by stopping the cycle of generational poverty. I look forward to hearing from my testifier, and I am grateful that we're laying this over for possible inclusion.
Thank you, Representative Hicks. First on the list, we have Sandy Seymour. If you could introduce yourself and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Sandy Seymour. I'm the Head Start Director for Freeborn and Olmsted counties in Minnesota. I've been with Head Start for 35 years, and I've seen a lot of children and families benefit from the program. I've been in Rochester for 20 years, and I just want you to know that even though Head Start is celebrating their 60th birthday this year, we are not the same Head Start. Our commitment to families in poverty is still the same, but we use research and data for continuous improvement to really help to make sure that we are optimizing the progress of both the children and the families in our program. One of the ways we do that is we use authentic child assessment data. And so we're doing that for our infants, toddlers, and preschoolers. That's one of the requirements of Head Start. And so we use that data over the years and find out, yes, children do need more dosage, so we make longer days for our children. Yes, children do need transportation in order to show up, so we've provided transportation. And we also use that data to look at other ways that we can really support the children and families we serve. One of the ways we're doing that in Rochester is working with the Minnesota Head Start Association with the data group that we've had there for many, many years, looking at our child assessment data. But we're looking for those children who are leaving us and entering kindergarten, which ones are the least likely to be ready? And then we provide summer school for those children to give them an extra boost before kindergarten. And it really works. And I can tell you that it really works. And right now, we're serving 503 children in our program, and that's infants, toddlers, preschoolers, and pregnant moms. We used to just be all about preschoolers, but from the research, it shows that it's really important to start early. We're doing infants and toddlers first in home base, but now the past several years, our parents have told us, we need center base. So we're doing center base programming for those children too. So that not only are we meeting the needs of the children and the families through the opportunities they have through Head Start, we're also providing full days of programming so the parents can pursue their work and their school goals. And we're, as a whole family program, our home visitors work alongside the families to provide support to families in achieving goals such as obtaining housing, getting a GED, finding employment. And some of our parents, many of our staff are our current or former parents, and we have a parent CDA program where those parents who are interested in working with children, we support their achievement of getting a CDA credential. And so I just want to say that this funding would allow us to serve those children on the wait list. We have an enrollment staff person within our program.
I could ask you to wrap up.
Okay, but I just want to say that she had little tears on her door for every child that she could not enroll because we didn't have room. So thank you so much for your support of Head Start.
Thank you so much. We do have an online testifier today, Amanda Mata. So you could unmute yourself and introduce yourself for the record and proceed.
Hi. Thank you, Madam Chair, and the committee for listening and taking the time to listen today. I am a mother of 4 who have gone through Head Start and early Head Start, and I love speaking on their behalf just to show and demonstrate kind of the wonderful things that Head Start and early Head Start have done for our family. I have a 4th grader who is reading and doing math at a middle school level. The only one in his class who is able to do that due to being in Head Start and receiving the extra quality time that he needed. My 5th grader, or my 5-year-old, I apologize, is getting ready for kindergarten and is way ahead of her level. And some days she thinks she's smarter than I am. I also have a 2-year-old who can sing the alphabet forward and backwards and count to 20 in English and Spanish. And I myself cannot do the alphabet backwards without sitting and concentrating on it really hard. These are just a couple of the things that I'm really proud of to say that Head Start has taught my kids. They nurture the kids, but it's also been a wonderful set of extra family members for us. We do a family engagement hour every month where we can see families that we don't see every day due to being in different classes. And it's nice for the parents to be able to communicate, you know, if I have questions on how to potty train this or what worked well for you, just to be able to have other families to talk to and bounce ideas off, but also, like Sandy had said, the Head Start also gives you a home visitor, and my kids adore when the visitor comes over. We have to plan a meal and they play hide and seek in the house. They have absolutely the best time. And then that home visitor has done more than just given me insight on things for my children. You know, they've set me up with how to take care of some credit card debt and pay off school and just other resources that kind of are out of their scope of what you would think would be really beneficial for a daycare setting. And so I just can't praise them enough. And I speak very highly of them and all that they do. And I just wish that there was more opportunity to have more kids experience this. and families experience this opportunity that we have been given. So just coming to ask for some more money and funding so that more kids can have this opportunity. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for sharing your experience with us, Ms. Mata. And just for the record, could you just state your name?
Oh, I'm so sorry, Amanda Mata.
Thank you so much for joining us today. All right.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Certainly. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to testify on House File 1002 this afternoon? Seeing none, we will move to member discussion and questions. Representative Sensimura.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Hicks, for bringing this bill. Just a couple questions. Can you say, so I see that the request is for $15 million. What is it currently being funded at now?
Representative Hicks.
Thank you so much for the question. So that's kind of, I'll defer to my testifier for specific numbers, but just to remind everyone, we have some base funding for Head Start, and we did do some one-time appropriations in the last session. I do not remember the exact numbers. I do apologize.
Representative Hicks, I think we actually will go to Mr. Berg with nonpartisan staff.
That would be really helpful. Thank you.
Mr. Berg.
Madam Chair, members, the base funding amount for Head Start is $34.398 million annually. I don't know off the top of my head about the one-time money.
Thank you, Mr. Berg.
I can look into that.
Representative Sensimura.
So to clarify, thank you, Madam Chair, is this 15 on top of the base funding?
Representative Hicks.
Yes.
Yes. All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Hicks, you know, I wonder if you can talk to it all. I know I've heard things about what's happening with the federal government and Head Start and potential cuts or pauses to the programming, you know, which I think intensifies the need for the state to make sure that there's secure funding. I don't know if you can speak to that at all. And then my second question is, wondering if you can talk about how these funds are distributed throughout the state. Thank you.
I do see another testifier joining us. If you would introduce yourself for the record and go ahead and get started on Representative Hicks, of course.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate that, Madam Chair. So the first thing I'll let my testifier go into the details, but the most recent budget resolution that came out federally did have, you know, some cuts in it, and I'll let my testifier speak to some specific Minnesota concerns.
Go ahead and introduce yourself for the record and proceed.
Well, good afternoon, Madam Chair, and Chair, and the committee. I've had discussions with a number of you off and on over the last couple of weeks. And so I think, you know, when we talk about Head Start and Head Start, the kind of the things that are going on federally with Head Start, you know, in 2024, we were preparing for a 6.25% reduction in funding. That didn't happen, and we rolled into a CR in fiscal year 25, and that was flat funding for us. There were cuts proposed and those things, but you saw how this played out just in the last couple of weeks. As we roll into fiscal year 2026, we are still anticipating, you know, a leveling of a federal budget, you know, a right sizing of a federal budget, and we anticipate cuts to Head Start federally. That could be anywhere from, I mean, the projections are anywhere from 1% to 5%, maybe higher. It all depends upon how that plays out in Health and Human Services. Some of the things that have already gone on for Head Start programming is we've seen a 20% reduction in federal Head Start staff. So the folks that do the work on the federal side for our grantees in Minnesota have been reduced, and we have all kinds of shuffling going on right now. Some of our grantees in Minnesota have had 5 different folks in charge of their grants in the last 4 months because of some of the shifting that has happened. Things like Medicaid, 89% of our kids in Head Start are on Medicaid. Cuts to that going to have a significant impact because our performance standards require us to provide health care and immunizations and dental care, and we're the payer of last resort. So if those don't exist, we have to pick up the cost for those things. The same kind of thing with Department of Education. We're required to provide services to children with special needs. If things happen federally that make changes to that and the funding to the state, we're having to pick up the slack for some of those things. So the cuts just aren't the Head Start directly. It's kind of the things that wrap around the kids that we serve and the families that we serve. And right now I can say I don't know what that all looks like. We're going to have to wait until September 30th, see if there's a budget, if there's another CR, and kind of where we're at.
Thank you for that. If you could just state your name for the record, please.
Sorry, I'm Craig Grotke. I'm the Executive Director of the Minnesota Head Start Association.
Thank you so much for sharing that perspective with us. Representative Sensimir, any follow-up? Briefly, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wondering if Representative Hicks or one of the testifiers could speak to my question about how does the funds get distributed across the state?
Right.
Thank you.
It's very complicated.
So we have a funding formula that works in Minnesota, and the first part of the funding formula, I think it's around 10.72 or 10.74% of the funding goes to the tribal nations. That's the minimum, depending upon how a couple of other things work. The second part of that rolls into the amount of federal funding that an agency gets. And so if they add all of the federal funding up in Minnesota and they divide that and each agency gets their percentage share of that, of the state funding is comparable to the federal percentage share, right, on that side. And so the tribal nations now do get more than 10.74% because they have more of that federal share. That's how the tribal nations and the seasonal migrant program get their allotment, is that front end kind of piece. On the back side, what we would call our non-tribal and non-seasonal migrant programs, that money is divided two different ways. One is based on federal share, just like the tribal nation portion of it. The other half of that is divided on unmet need. And so we use the ACS data, and it's a 5-year average by county. And the Department of Children, Youth, and Families looks at that, breaks it down, and that other part of that funding goes to where the most kids are that are not being served. Does that make sense? It's a lot more complicated than that, but I mean, that's the gist of it.
Thank you, Mr. Grotke. I think, all right, Representative McDonald, briefly, and then we'll need to wrap up this bill. We have still two bills on the agenda.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Go right
As
ahead.
always, I am brief. Just Representative Hicks, in 2023, we had a record amount of $90 million for literacy in Minnesota after a decade of advocating for more money for literacy. But yet our test scores have fallen since 2016 and hitting a record low of 2023, so that's 2 years ago. Do you believe that your bill, and I know the good things that Head Start does, but providing yet more money for this funding will hopefully increase our literacy rates in Minnesota? Because they've been dropping, of course, nationwide, but Minnesota has had record lows. And it seems like we put more money into it, more money, is that really producing the results that we want in literacy? And I understand Head Start does a lot more than just literacy as well.
All right.
That's all, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Representative McDonald. Representative Hicks.
Thank you. So I don't know, did you set this up? Did you know that I'm dyslexic and incredibly passionate about literacy? I don't know if you knew that, but it's one of the things I talk about pretty regularly. So maybe you had heard that. So when we talk about literacy, we have to talk about literacy across the ages, and we need to talk about it from a couple of different perspectives. So literacy isn't just learning how to read, although that's a way that we like to talk about it a lot. Literacy actually involves your ears, your eyes, and your senses, and it involves all of the things necessary to teach phonemic awareness, which leads us into literacy. And phonemic awareness is a huge part of Head Start, because if you don't hear that cow and tow, cow and plow rhyme, then you're not picking up on those phonemic end sounds and those components. And when children don't hear phonemic sounds correctly, that can be a sign that they have a learning disability. And if we can teach phonemic awareness early with things like rhyming games and making the connection that letters are visual representations of sounds, and that when we put letters together, we create new sounds and syllable patterns, and all of those pieces are such early phases of literacy that I think, because a lot of my generation, millennial parents, we were taught to read using whole word, which is why some of us with dyslexia didn't learn to read till we were 10 or 12 and got specialized treatment or specialized tutoring, because we were taught with whole word. So we're not having those natural conversations with our little ones because nobody taught them to us. And so that family wraparound piece, that's a lot of the parent education that Head Start does, is educating parents about how to instill those early literacy skills, because we've lost that. And the reason I think, personally, that we're seeing a lot of that not pan out in older kiddos is because we've lost a whole generation of people who are now adults who don't understand basic phonemic awareness and literacy, because we all bought into whole word and we missed huge chunks, which is why I'm so grateful that we worked to shift that in the Minnesota legislature and frankly across the country. As a dyslexic adult, it's something that I'm really passionate about, and so I love the connections that Head Start makes to phonemic awareness and early literacy, and how that will help build on the literacy gains that we're making in Minnesota as a whole.
Thank you for that, Representative Hicks, and just Chair's privilege. I think, this is one of the most important points that we have been trying to make in many years of this committee, that early childhood education and child care are uniquely and inextricably linked to each other. And research will show us, to the dismay of my co-chair, that the return on investment of putting money into early childhood education is the best place that we could possibly invest any state funds in order to gain more back on the flip side and down the road as our children grow and turn into successful contributing members of society. So with that, I'll ask you for brief closing comments if you would like to say anything further.
I would just say that I personally believe that Head Start is a wonderful program that benefits so many children. And if I had a magic wand and a fifth tax tier, I would be able to use some of those Head Start funds to make sure, all of our children had access to such a wonderful wraparound care.
Thank you, Representative Hicks, and to your testifiers. With that, we lay over House File 1002 for possible inclusion in our committee finance bill. Next bill on the list, members, is my bill, House File 994. So I'm going to turn over the gavel to Vice Chair Hansen, and I am moving House File 994 before the committee today.
Thank you, Chair. You can go ahead and present your bill whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members for participating in this really exciting discussion today about a variety of community programs and statewide nonprofits that contribute to the growth and development of our littlest learners here in Minnesota. I'm privileged to bring before you House File 994 today, which is additional funding for the ParentChild Plus program here in Minnesota. The program has been around a number of years. We're running short on time today, and I want to make sure that we have plenty of time to discuss Chair West's proposal after this. So I'm going to yield my time to my testifiers so that they can tell you a little bit more about the impact that the program has had on their lives.
Thank you, Chair. You can go ahead and introduce yourself for the committee and proceed.
Great, thank you. My name is Amy Weiss, and I'm the Chief Program Officer at Jewish Family and Children's Service of Minneapolis. And I'd like to thank the co-chairs and the committee for having us here today, and special thanks to Representative for being our lead author on the bill. So JFCS has a long history of supporting children and families in the community since our founding more than 115 years ago. And that support has changed over time, especially we started working with schools, and we started working with the schools skills with the kids that were already in school. And it was at that point that we realized that we were late to the game. We needed to be working with the really little learners. And so we determined that we needed to start earlier. So we started researching what was the most effective way to do that. And our research took us to a program that we think offers the best outcomes and is the most effective, and that's the ParentChild Plus program. ParentChild Plus is an international early childhood school readiness program, and it's working across 16 states and in 6 countries. And it's a home visiting program for families that promotes creative ways to learn and play and to acquire language. It enhances parenting skills and helps children be prepared for school. As indicated by the name, the focus is really on a multi-generational approach, so it offers child development and also parenting skills that helps parents become their child's first and best advocate and teacher. So JFCS became the first replication site for the ParentChild Plus program in 2006, and we started with just 18 families. And our core locations are the Twin Cities and Cass County. And in 2017, we expanded to St. Cloud, Rochester, and Rice County in partnership with organizations in the community. This bill would allow us to maintain that funding for those partner sites. This year, we have 387 kids receiving services, 230 in the Twin Cities, and 157 in Greater Minnesota. At the midpoint of this program year, when we turned in our report to the Department of Children, Youth, and Families, we had already provided over 8,100 home visits, putting us on track for more than 16,000 this program year. So we believe that ParentChild Plus produces great outcomes and is hugely successful in closing the opportunity gap. There's some specific information in your packet about what's happening at each of the program sites, and also our most recent report to the Department of Children, Youth, and Families. But I want to highlight just a couple of things. 90% of the families that participate in this program show an increase in parent-child communication techniques that promotes language and literacy, tying back to the previous bill. Graduation rates are 30% higher for the children from families with low income that participate in the ParentChild Plus program versus those that don't. And one of our private philanthropic funders has noted that for every $1 spent on this program, the return on the investment is $5.55. So successful implementation there. I'll turn it over to one of my colleagues who will share more specifics about the home visit and what that looks like.
Thank you so much. Our next testifier, you can go ahead, introduce yourself, and proceed.
Sure. My name is Sarah Wise, and I'm the Assistant Program Manager of ParentChild Plus in Minnesota, but I also serve as an early learning specialist with more than 10 years of home visiting experience. What's specifically unique about this program is the intensive nature of it. We enroll children between 16 months and 2.5 years, and our early learning specialists visit each home twice a week, 30 minutes each visit for 2 full school years. So that's a lot of visits, as Amy mentioned. Each week, the early learning specialist brings the family an educational book and toy, and I've got some examples here. But the program goes a lot further than just these materials. Our focus is really building a relationship with that parent and modeling the social, verbal, and verbal interaction that we know are essential for kids' development. We work with many of our state's most vulnerable families, many of whom are extremely isolated, and we connect them to resources they might not otherwise access. We know that investing in kids, as we've discussed a lot today, is really, during this important window, avoids a lot of costlier interventions down the road, particularly when it comes to special education. When we can identify those concerns early and get kids caught up or refer them to other services before they get to school, we can avoid expensive services at a time when we know that school budgets are strained. So you heard Amy talk a little bit about our metrics, but I want to look beyond those numbers and close by telling you very briefly about one boy named Mateo who I witnessed make this extraordinary leap from struggling to school readiness. When Mateo joined our program at age 2.5, he didn't speak a word. Through most of our first year, he was essentially mute. He was cheerful and engaging, but he got easily frustrated because he struggled to communicate and would have emotional outbursts at every visit. His mom wasn't sure why he couldn't speak. Using the materials that I brought and the skills we practiced, she talked and read patiently to him, but she was still worried he would fall behind. By the spring, he'd finally started to say a few words related to the activities we were doing, like open and close with scissors or the shapes in our shape toy. But he was not yet putting together two-word sentence. And because I was able to gain that family's trust, I was able to refer them and suggest some speech services. He qualified, and he made enormous gains to get him on track before getting to school. During our second year, he made so much progress, his vocabulary grew steadily, and his tantrums disappeared. By the time he graduated from our program, he was an enthusiastic student who could write every letter, count to 25, spell his name, and gone from struggling to speak at all to heading off to school ready to learn, actually ahead of his peers, which was truly an honor to witness and be a part of. So thank you for your time, and I'm just going to very briefly turn it over to our partner in Rice County so we can talk about a little bit about the impact of the program in that area.
Thank you. Next testifier, you can introduce yourself and proceed.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jen Barrientos. I work with Healthy Community Initiative as the Growing Up Healthy Director, and that is where we hold the ParentChild Plus program. When we first brought the ParentChild Plus program to Rice County, we enrolled 15 children. This year, we have 47 children enrolled in the ParentChild Plus program. The story that I'm going to tell you is from an ELS that is working with the ParentChild program in Rice County. So 2 years ago, Odalis, one of our early learning specialists, met a family who was new to the United States. They arrived with nothing here. They even didn't know how to speak a single word in English. Odalis connected with this family immediately and supported them as they settled into their new apartment. This family will be graduating the PC Plus program in June this year. This is a bittersweet moment, This is a bittersweet moment for Odalis as she has witnessed a lot of their many accomplishments. The family, especially the child, learned English through the PC Plus program. The child went from speaking a couple words in English to full sentences to even singing songs in English. The family faced many hardships, including marital struggles, a miscarriage, financial issues, and mother epilepsy episodes. Despite all these challenges, they stayed strong and supported each other. In addition to weekly ParentChild Plus visits, the family received resources like therapy, energy assistance, English classes, CPR training, driver's ed, and the family was also connected to the Community Action Center for food access, medical insurance, and other resources that they offer. The family is grateful to Odalis and the program and doesn't want the visits to end, but Odalis has reassured them it's not a goodbye, it's just a see you later, and she'll still be around in case they need her. This is just one of many stories where ELSs or early learning specialists have made meaningful connections with PC Plus families.
Thank you so much. Members, we'll turn it over to member discussion. Any questions? Look how amazing you did, Chair Kotyza-Witthuhn. Good job. Well, I'll turn it back to you for final comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And members, since we are laying over House File 994, we'll have additional time to talk about the proposal and concerns and if anybody has any. But I'm really, again, proud to bring this proposal forward. There are 17 families in Eden Prairie in my district that are benefiting from these services. And I think that, one of the things that when we think about our little ones, the consistency and having just somebody, a trusting person to build that relationship and bring in the advice. None of us as parents know what the heck we're doing until we're in it, right? And then we're in the thick of it. And sometimes it can be really, really hard to ask for help or to know who to turn to for help. And so I think the ParentChild Plus program and so many of the others that we heard from today and other committee hearings yet this session have made such a tremendous impact. So I really believe in what they're doing and appreciate the committee hearing it today.
Thank you, Chair Kotyza-Witthuhn. And Chair Kotyza-Witthuhn makes a motion to move to lay over House File 994 for possible inclusion in the committee's omnibus bill. And next up is House File 1915 from Chair West. And then as Chair Kotyza-Witthuhn makes her way back up here, I will give the gavel back to her.
Members, our motion for House File 1915 from Chair West is that we are going to re-refer to the Committee on Judiciary, Finance, and Civil Law. So Chair West, when you and your first testifiers are ready, we will have House File 1915 before the committee. And again, that motion is to 1915 to be re-referred to the Committee on Judiciary, Finance, and Civil Law. Representative West, you do have a DE4 amendment. Would you like to just move that right away? I know that that is the bulk of the conversation that we'll be having today here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I will move the DE4 amendment. If we can just do a vote on it quickly, and I can go over what's in it.
Okay,
but
absolutely.
it's the whole bill.
Members, go ahead and move the DE4 to get the bill into the shape that the chair would like. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. The DE4 amendment is adopted, and you can go ahead and introduce your bill as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And first, I have to thank Chair Kotyza-Witthuhn for hearing this bill today on her day. One of my daughter's abusers is pleading out tomorrow in court, so I wanted to make sure the families had time to testify who are affected, and she was gracious enough, continues to be gracious enough to give us the opportunity, and I really appreciate it. So House File 1915 is critical to the safety of our children, and to really ensure that abusers see justice done. As you know, the impetus of this bill is from my family's own experience when our daughter was abused at a child care center in Blaine. And my wife will share the story, but camera footage is the only reason the abusers are being brought to justice. However, the center only retained footage for 1 week. And as a result, 3 of the 5 felony charges are unlikely to stick. And we're looking at a minimal, not substantial penalty for these abusers as it works through the process. And Thursday, February 6th, another video surfaced that many of you are aware of an incident at Little Explorers childcare in Plymouth, where a child was shoved into a table and yanked around and yelled at. And you'll hear from that child's father today, too. And thanks to the heroic deeds of Yanni Thomas, who worked in that daycare setting, and that was her last day, she recorded the footage of that happening. And that would have never been known had she not had the courage to record it and put her job on the line. We need this bill. And this bill addresses these concerns by requiring a 60-day retention period on footage and requiring cameras in toddler and infant rooms, as well as the fenced outdoor area. I've made many, many, many revisions to this bill in consultation with providers and the department. And my goal is to ease compliance efforts and reduce costs. So in this DE amendment that was just adopted, this amendment lowered the retention period from 90 to 60 days. I did this after evaluating compliance costs, which you should have just gotten a handout on now. There are not many affordable options at 90 days plus, but there are many affordable options at 60 days. It specifies the placement of cameras in this amendment, which was ambiguous initially. It refines the situations when a parent is allowed to view but not obtain a copy of the footage. It extends the period of retention to 6 months if there's an incident that must be reported under Minnesota rules, so death, fire, ambulance. I can talk about that further if anybody wishes. And at the request of providers, it holds them harmless for license violations where the only evidence is this video footage, as long as that's not a health and safety violation. So if it's something simple, they don't just get dinged again. And also at their request, it includes the ability for them to use this as training if they receive written consent from anybody who is not redacted in the video that they'll be using for training purposes. It requires a written policy from the provider to any parent who wants to bring their child there, so they're aware of the situation that with camera monitoring. And lastly, it provides an expansion of the uses for installation of cameras and training in the technology grants funds that centers can apply for with additional money. And while I'm obviously personally invested in this, I've taken input, I've made compromises that I've gotten I've gotten resistance to the bill, but I've also had resistance to any effort to make the bill easier on anybody who has to install these cameras. I don't just want to do this as an exercise. This needs to become law, and without it, we're going to continue to not have people brought to justice, because in our case, and I know in many other cases, footage is the only reason. And my wife, lovely wife, is here today to tell our story.
Thank you for being with us today. If you could introduce yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
My name is Megan West. My husband is Nolan, and our daughter Sybil was abused at her daycare. While she was there, less than a month after she started, she was 3 months old, we started to see marks and bruises on her on an almost daily basis when she came home. I was very suspicious of these, so I took photos of her injuries. We wanted to believe what the daycare workers were telling us, because it's never something you want to believe that they're getting abused at daycare, so we didn't do anything at the time. When later we found out many other babies were being harmed, and an investigation begun, the abusers had 5 felony charges, included one related to our daughter Sybil. The prosecutors told us that without video proof, the charges with Sybil would likely not hold up. They had 2 felonies on video, and we can only imagine how many there would have been if the video would have been held for more than 7 days. We only have pictures of Sybil's injuries from before and after the abuse, and the daycare only kept footage for 1 week. So there's no video of what happened to her and many other children. Thankfully, the week of the footage covered at least 2 of the charges, but that is just not enough. This bill is very important. We need this bill, and we need more. We need cameras in daycares, and a rule to keep footage for a lot longer than it's currently being kept. Without these changes, it won't be just Sybil who suffers. Justice won't be served for so many. So please support House File 1915.
Thank you, Mrs. West, for joining us today. Next on the list, we have Suzanne Dickinson. If you could approach the testifiers table and introduce yourself and proceed with your testimony. We also have Janice DeGonda on the list, so if you want to also head up to the table. Thank you. You know, these are hard stories to share, so we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us and share your experience. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Suzanne Dickinson. As I was preparing for today, all I felt was anger. Everywhere we go today, we are on some kind of video. Cameras have proved crimes and have disproved crimes. I was truly shocked to learn that daycares are not required to even have them. My granddaughter was abused at Small World Learning Center last July. She was born 9 weeks premature and did not even weigh 4 pounds. She was 5 months old when her abuse was reported to the police and child protection while we were at the emergency room. The daycare was aware she was to be treated as a 3-month-old, premature, immobile infant. We are fortunate that the most severe incident was obtained by the police while we were still at the hospital. More so because they delete all video after 7 days. In the police report and court cases, she's referred to as Infant 1. To me, she's my heart, my namesake, and as I call her, my little bird. and we hope to see some kind of justice tomorrow done to one of her abusers. Due to that deletion of video, we will never truly know of all the other incidents of abuse that she got. But then my anger rises as I know there are over a dozen other victims in this case who will never have hope to see any kind of justice because there is no video. The unknown has personally caused me nightmares since her abusers were arrested. Having the opportunity to review incidents causing injuries should be available for parents to view. That unknown is hell to live with. Remembering that these victims were unable to do anything except cry and scream in fear and pain, I ask all of you to please help by mandating cameras in daycares, the length of said video, and give parents the right to see what truly happened to their child. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dickinson. Ms. DeGonda, you can introduce yourself and proceed when you're ready.
Hi, my name is Janice DeGonda. I have a 1-year-old daughter who was also abused at Small World with Mr. West's daughter. At the time of the abuse, she was 5 months old, but gestationally 3 months old, as I had delivered 2 months early due to severe preeclampsia. After 37 days in the NICU, learning how to be first-time parents to a premature baby, we were able to bring her home, to which then she had to attend daycare a few weeks later. We found the daycare and had appreciated the security of the building, the small classroom ratios, and that they had cameras, as cameras were a big factor for us. After a month attending, our daughter started coming home with bruises, abrasions, or scratches. Every time that we noticed a mark, we would ask the daycare about it, and we were always told the same thing. She must be getting pinched from either the infant swing clip, the Velcro from her sleep set caused the scratch, her infant chair caused it, her nails were too long, or just that they did not know what caused it, so they did not know. At the time, those seemed like likely excuses. We did not think about questioning it too much, as these were people paid to protect our child, along with other children, and that there were cameras. Surely if something was wrong, it would be noticed. We thought that the cameras were being watched closely to protect all the children attending this daycare. Then we had a phone conversation with the director in June about our concerns. She kept coming home with marks, and they kept having issues feeding her, so much so that we brought her to the doctor to see if she had infant GERD. After that conversation, the marks suddenly stopped until July. We did not notice the significant bruising until we were home and doing a diaper change, as they were covered by her clothes. They were on her legs, her stomach, her groin, and her butt. This is what made us bring her into the hospital to get checked out and what started this investigation. We received a phone call from the detective doing the investigation who let us know our daughter was caught on camera along with 2 other children being abused. Then to find out that they only kept the daycare footage for a week at a time. This is highly unacceptable. Camera footage needs to be kept much longer, if not for abuse reasons, but for simply training opportunities for the staff. If this daycare kept footage longer, I am certain that this investigation would not be still ongoing. There are over a dozen families involved with this case, but only 5 of us with charges due to having the footage. And some families aren't even able to get charges added on due to there being no footage. If the daycare had kept it for longer, there would be more charges, more families with questions answered, and more families getting justice for their children. We need to be able to feel safe that our children are safe when they are not in our care. And if questions arise on their safety, we need to be able to see what is going on. We must protect them at all costs, and this is the start of doing so. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story with us. Is there anyone else? You can feel free to come up to the testifiers table. Thank you for joining us again today. Feel free to reintroduce yourself for the record and proceed.
Thank you. My name is Josh Truax. Thank you, Madam Chair, for having me today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Josh. My son was enrolled in a facility where he was verbally abused and physically manhandled on February 6th while 19 other children were there to witness these repeated acts on almost a daily basis for a period of 3 to 4 months. I am here today because I and others recognize an urgent need for reform in our daycare system, an industry entrusted with the well-being of our youngest and most vulnerable children. The safety of our children is not just a priority, it's a fundamental right. Yet time and time again, we hear heartbreaking stories about neglect and mistreatment and abuse within daycare facilities, such as what happened to my son on February 6th and what happened at Small World last July. The unfortunate truth is that without proper oversight, these violations too often go unseen and unaddressed. It is time for real change, and it's time for accountability, and I'm calling on you guys to help make a difference. One of the most effective tools to protect our children and provide transparency is the installation of cameras with audio in, at minimum, the baby and toddler rooms. These early years are the most crucial in a child's development, yet infants and toddlers cannot speak for themselves, and that's why it matters. With recorded footage, we empower parents, facility directors, and authorities to ensure that every child is receiving the care that they deserve. Daycare safety does not stop at the classroom doors. Outdoor play areas are common places for injuries, accidents, and potential misconduct. By requiring cameras in these spaces, we provide an extra layer of protection and ensure that no corner of a daycare facility becomes a blind spot for mistreatment or harm. Parents deserve the peace of mind that comes with knowing that their child is safe in a safe and nurturing environment. By allowing parents to review footage, we are not only fostering trust, but encouraging daycares to uphold the highest standards of care. A responsible daycare should have nothing to hide. The measure is not about micromanaging. It is about ensuring that every child is treated with the respect and kindness that they deserve. Requiring footage to be retained for at least 60 days and extending that period to 6 months if injuries occur is a crucial safeguard against injustice. Too often, concerns arise weeks after an incident, and without video evidence, the truth remains elusive. This policy will help ensure that proper investigations can take place, preventing abusers from escaping accountability and allowing innocent caregivers to clear their names when wrongly accused. In conclusion, we must ask ourselves, what kind of society do we want to build for our children? One where mistreatment is hidden behind closed doors, or one where transparency and accountability are non-negotiable? By implementing these common sense reforms, cameras with audios, outdoor surveillance, parental access, and extended footage retention, we are taking a powerful stand for our children's safety and well-being. Let us not wait for another tragic story to spur us into action. Let us act now for the sake of our children and for the peace of mind of every parent who entrusts a daycare with their most precious gift. Please support House File 1915. Thank you.
Thank you for your time and sharing your story again with us, Mr. Truax. Members, we've got 5 minutes for questions, which is not enough. This is a heavy lift, and I appreciate the chair for working on it. But just a reminder to keep our comments brief. While this bill is, the motion is to re-refer to judiciary, we likely will have ongoing conversation here in committee as we put together our omnibus bill. So first on the list, I have Representative McDonald.
Madam Chair, Representative West, a great bill, very important. I don't see anywhere in the bill that it would have any penalties for a daycare center to say, well, it wasn't plugged in, or wasn't wired, or was milk thrown on the camera, or it wasn't working for some reason. And that's a lousy excuse, of course, and there should be no excuse. But sometimes those things happen, and sometimes maybe deliberately. So is there any mechanism that, not maybe currently in the bill, because I didn't read it, but going forward, that an amendment would be, or something that you would think about, that, hey, if a daycare provider is not doing what the law, if this should pass, and hopefully it will, institutes, that there's a penalty?
Chair West.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative McDonald. It would be, they're a licensed entity, so this could be enforced through a licensing inspection or something like that. Also, don't want to add penalties because don't want to go to public safety.
Okay. And then lastly,
Representative McDonald.
So on one of your, the Effie, or I think it's Yuki, I just installed one of these in our home so I can see whenever my wife or kids or a package comes and goes. Would that be available for parents to be able to watch their children throughout the day, or be notified if there's something?
I think the question, Chair West, is on closed circuit and.
Yeah, no, so this is a concern brought up in the letter from MCCA, so I'm just going to go into that really quick. So didn't want to mandate Wi-Fi cameras because they are significantly less secure. They still can use them if they'd like, but as some daycare centers already do, but I would recommend closed circuit because those are incredibly difficult to penetrate. And then there's also a question of why centers and not everyone. The bill started as everyone. Working through the process, I still want to provide a choice for families who don't necessarily want their kid to be on camera. I don't understand that, quite honestly, but they should have that choice. So they will still retain that choice. This will only be for centers. But one thing, like a family care provider is 1 or 2 caregivers. When they have a maltreatment situation, they're getting shut down almost for sure. It's very hard for them to keep going, if at all. Whereas with a center, a lot of times they fire the employee, move on with their day. So there's a different level of accountability that needs to be had. And as far as costs, I included this so you could see the recurring costs, and a system costs about $1,000, and there's money to help them. I don't like adding the cost of daycare. Hopefully we can help them out in the omnibus bill as well. But I think these are reasonable costs.
Representative Sensimura?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I would just love a follow-up conversation with you. Chair West, I really understand the desire behind the bill. I think I have a number of concerns that I think we're not going to have a conversation about right now. I think it was helpful for me to hear, that this is more on the, if people are charged, this will help with the charging of them and helping to make sure that justice is served. I do see in the letter from MCCA that they bring up that, there's not research or data that necessarily shows us that there's going to be a link between video cameras and prevention of abuse, which I know is the goal, the true goal of everyone on this committee. So it gives me a little more context and understanding that this is really about, if there are charges brought, how do we make sure that there's evidence? But, I do have concerns around parents being able to opt out of this system or not. And then I also just have concerns about, continued burden for centers. I think we talked about it earlier. We need a really high bar for the folks that are working with our kids and especially working with our youngest. But I also think we need to match that with support and resources. And we know that we're not matching that with support and resources for our centers right now. So I do have concerns around extra burdens on them. I think, the data you passed out is helpful to get a sense of how much these costs might be, but I just have more kind of concerns about, the continued implementation, data storage, things like that. So I would love to have a conversation with you about that.
Representative Hemmingson-Yager?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you for having this conversation, Chair West. This is I totally understand the intent and I totally understand where you're coming from, and what happened to you and the other families is wrong. My concerns so I've been thinking a lot about this. I've actually been talking to constituents to get their reactions. I've actually talked to my siblings, one of which is a cybersecurity analyst in network security, and just to kind of get their gut check about it. And those are my concerns around the cybersecurity. So I'm glad to hear that you're thinking about it with the closed circuit versus the Wi-Fi versus the cloud storage. I have a lot of concerns on who's going to be able to access that and then how they're going to use that for a lot of the internet and AI sexual assault crimes that we're starting to see popping up. And I noticed that some of these companies, they offer AI detection and they offer analytics. So that's a flag to me where it's why do we need analytics if this is purely just an oversight kind of tool? And then I continue to have concerns, if they choose to do Wi-Fi or cloud storage. I remember there were stories when the video baby monitors started coming up. People were hacking into those homes and making monster voices to these babies. That's scary stuff. So really just have a lot of concerns on how people could use these nefariously. And we're happy to have conversations with you, connect you with my brother if you really want to dig into it. But I do understand the intent, and I thank you for coming forward with a good heart and a good intent.
We've got a few questions from Representative Hansen. Is that okay, Chair West? And then you can do some closing comments, or do you want to respond really quick?
Just Representative Hemmingson-Yager. Some of these the data things, we are working on an amendment for judiciary right now.
Perfect. Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Chair, as well. I really support your work in this. I know that you've been through things that you should not have been through, you and your wife and the others who have testified here today. I'm always sympathetic to that. I will say that in order for me to be a yes vote today, for it to leave this committee, I do need some more assurances regarding the prevalence of CSAM in this culture right now. And so just putting that on the record. I've talked about that before, so I will not continue to go into that. But those are the things that I need to make sure for my safety as somebody who's gone through something like that, and knowing that that is also a really, really hard thing to live with. So we can talk about that more, of course. A few of the things that I would like to in terms of that, just highlight is that I would like to see some information in this bill, maybe do this at judiciary, sure, about the cameras pointed at diapering and changing areas. That would be important to me, and how to address when there are multiple children in the video, and how do we protect a child's privacy from having their photo entered into a court record when that child is not the subject of the situation. I am also reading through the MCAA letter. I had a couple of concerns there about, again, the security. I would love to see a closed circuit mandate in this. I actually think that would address a ton of my concerns about who can actually access this information. And just remembering that at a time in our culture when we know that the production of CSAM is been emboldened by a number of different things happening globally, I think it's really important that everything we do in these committees, and hopefully judiciary talks about this too, that we do that. But as always, my friend, I appreciate your passion on this. I'm so sorry you went through this as new parents. Nobody deserves to go through that. And I think if we can protect kids from this and from this other very prevalent piece of abuse that's happening from kids becoming subjects of CSAM as well, I would support that. But for today, unfortunately, because that is a priority for me here in the legislature, I will be a no vote just for that reason alone.
Representative Hansen, for those who might not be familiar, can you define CSAM for the committee?
Certainly, just like a warning on it, CSAM is child sexual abuse material.
Thank you so much. Representative West, Chair West, I'll give you closing comments.
Thank you so much for hearing this bill, and thank you for sharing your concerns. And as always, our committee is collaborative, and that's what I'm very proud that we are able to build that culture. On the closed circuit mandate, the only reason I would oppose that is because many centers already use Wi-Fi cameras, and it would be kind of strange to have the people who do have cameras have to undo their cameras after we tell them they have to have cameras. But if that, whatever it takes to get the bill signed into law, I'm pretty much willing to do. These privacy concerns are really serious. Representative Scott treats them very seriously. I know we're already over time, so yeah, I'll move to re-refer the bill to the Judiciary Committee.
All right, members, Chair West renews his motion to re-refer to the House File 1915 as amended, be re-referred to the Committee on Judiciary, Finance, and Civil Law. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Right. The motion prevails, and the House File 1915 as amended is re-referred to the Committee on Judiciary, Finance, and Civil Law. Thanks to all the testifiers who shared their hard stories with us today, and we are adjourned.